Welcome to the program, everybody. We are so honored today to have Dr. Jemma Green talking with us, coming from Perth, Australia. She is the co-founder of PowerLedger, which is a program I reviewed the other day, and it's a really, really exciting project that they have going. And so Dr. Green has agreed to come and have a chat to us and tell us a little more about the project and a little bit about renewable energy in Australia. So, Jemma, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lark.
You're welcome. Now, I wanted to start off by, for anyone who didn't see the PowerLedger video or hasn't heard much about, what you guys are doing yet, can you give us the elevator pitch?
Sure. So basically, we've got a blockchain technology that enables peer-to-peer trading of electricity. And this means that people can get a proper return for the electricity that they generate but don't need. Mm-hmm. And it's been a big missing until now, as people that have had solar panels have pretty much got the raw end of the deal. And our platform means electricity can be made and consumed locally rather than across the distribution lines, avoiding the transmission lines, which will help in stopping the rising cost of electricity. And our technology is basically creating more competition in the market. So we're helping the market to evolve more rapidly to distributed, low-cost and low-carbon energy.
Awesome. And the decentralization, I suppose, or at least, the fairer distribution of the network is such a necessity. I was looking a lot into renewable energy and all these things before I came back to New Zealand about a year ago. And, there's just so much that needs to be done, and one of the things I was actually thinking at the time is, what we really need is a company who's going to connect all this together, because if I want to sell my solar power now, for example, and I sell it to the power company traditionally, it's not a very good deal. And actually, they passed a new tax here recently in New Zealand. I'm sure you've heard about this. It's kind of the solar tax, and so it's actually become a bit harder. But companies like yours are going to make it so much easier for the average person really to get involved, and I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, the energy system has pretty much been like a one-way street for the past century, with big power stations, transmission lines and distribution lines bringing electricity to our homes. But in the past probably decade, a new system has started to emerge, a bi-directional system, where citizens are becoming power stations, but the grid really isn't set up to buy electricity from our houses any more than a supermarket is geared up to buy homegrown tomatoes. But I think that our trading system can deal with that level of complexity and settle payments between buyers and sellers. And it's not like at the moment you have to wait 60 days till you get your bill and you get paid for any electricity you sell back to the grid. But using our platform and the blockchain, the movement of electricity is the payment as part of the same entry into the database. And so in blockchain world, we talk about that as being frictionless. So you don't have an intermediary and it happens instantaneously. So that's also very exciting.
Yeah, it's just such a fantastic concept, really, to bring this all together. And one thing that I really liked and had thought about previously as kind of a problem to this is, okay, I want to buy some energy from my neighbor John, right? But what if he can't provide enough for my house? And I see you guys have kind of solved that, so you can buy X amount in solar energy, but if there's not that available today, well, the power company will still fill in that gap.
Correct. So, with solar panels, obviously they only generate electricity when the sun's shining, and so the platform would really, if from a peer-to-peer trading perspective, would be when the sun's shining. But as battery prices come down, which they are very rapidly now, then you could start to see a future of more 24-hour renewable power. But essentially, all that electricity that you do trade peer-to-peer is across the grid, and your traditional energy company would be your provider of last resort for any differential power that you might need as well. So it's not about replacing the existing system. It's about creating a proper marketplace for distributed renewables so that actually when you get the price signal in place, you're more likely to encourage more renewables and distributed storage into the network. So it's about creating the marketplace and the payback, the financial return to encourage a distributed renewable energy future.
And what kind of savings do you think that an average customer might be able to have by, going to the marketplace and purchasing, solar energy, for example?
It's very context specific depending on the marketplace. Like in Australia, I think it's safe to say there could be savings of sort of $600 to $900 per year if you're buying electricity from your neighbour, or you could enhance double the return you're getting on your solar panels if you're selling it.
Wow.
It's quite significant. But again, each market is different, and so the way we've designed our platform is you have what's called an application host, which would be an energy retailer and a network operator that offer customers peer-to-peer trading within that network. And within that, there will be an arrangement for how much is paid to the network for use of it to send electricity from point to point. And so we're working with network businesses in Australia and New Zealand and in other countries as well to figure out what's an appropriate price signal so that you do encourage that kind of marketplace.
Yeah, and it's a very dynamic thing as well. I know that, the farther away you get from the power generation source, that might affect price, and a lot of different things come into play. How is there excess solar today, therefore the price is down, and et cetera, et cetera. It's definitely dynamic pricing, but, those kind of ballpark figures I think can help, your average Joe kind of understand, well, what's in it for me? Actually significant savings and the warm and fuzzies that, hey, you're helping the planet out and, we're moving the world forward in a positive way, which is really
Correct.
Exciting.
Yeah, I think that's really the democratization of power, and low cost and low carbon electricity is something that really personally motivates me. And I think that, a lot of people have installed solar panels for those reasons. So in Australia, 20% of households have rooftop solar. I know it's less than that in New Zealand, but the growth rates in New Zealand are very high. Mm-hmm. And you can see that also in North America and in Europe as well. So in Perth, where I'm based, actually 25% of households have rooftop solar, and it's double-digit percentage growth every year. How our platform works is it connects to meters, so it gets the data from the meters in terms of how much electricity is being spilled out onto the network or sucked in, and it registers that information on the blockchain to create the transaction and financial payment off the back of it. And how the payments work is quite interesting because we have two tokens. We have a twin token system. So Sparks is like a tokenized unit of electricity.
Yep.
And one Spark is always 1 cent in the local currency. So if I put $1 on the platform, I get 100 Sparks, and when I convert the Sparks back to dollars, I get 100. So the customer's not exposed to any cryptocurrency fluctuation.
Oh, that's great. I didn't even realize that when I read the white paper the other day, that the Spark is pegged. So that's fantastic, actually.
Yeah, exactly. And then application hosts, which are network operators and energy retailers, they need power tokens, the second token, as a license to trade on the platform and as a bond. And so they will need the power tokens to put them in escrow to purchase Sparks, which they can sell to their customers. And the reason we designed it like that is the blockchains need to be self-regulating. And so when I'm, as a customer, go to redeem my Sparks, the money that's used to fund that redemption is in the form of the power token. And so it means that customers would never be ripped off, and the amount of power tokens that any application host will need will be determined on a market basis and also on a credit worthiness basis. So blue chip application hosts would need less power. And also there'll be a feedback mechanism where customers can say this application host is really great or terrible, and they'll need to put more or less power accordingly. So that's another self-regulating feature of the system design.
Great. It's such an exciting project, and the tech's behind it. You guys have a working project, which is really, really fantastic. I do a lot of reviews of different projects, and when I read about the PowerLedger project, I thought, wow, this is they're not only a company who are doing real things, but that it's such a fantastic idea as well. So that's really exciting. I wanted to ask a little bit about power in Australia. So obviously solar's a really big potential for Australia, but what other areas of growth do you see for renewable energy moving forward in Australia?
Well, although we happen to be based in Australia, we see ourselves as an international company. Our first projects have been clearly here and in New Zealand, but we're responding to international inbound queries with projects in India that we'll be announcing within the next day or two.
Oh, fantastic.
And also, we've got projects in the US that we hope to be making announcements around soon as well. But a little bit around the Australian context, because I think it is relevant, because we have very high electricity prices in Australia. They've grown like 200% against the consumer price index in the past decade. So we've also got a lot of sun. So in Perth, nearly 200 days of sunshine every year. Mm-hmm. What that means is that when you've got high electricity prices and a lot of sun, that the economics of alternative energy makes sense faster here than it does in other parts of the world. And it's no accident that, companies like Tesla have chosen Australia as a key market for their batteries because of this very reason. So we're starting to see a lot of the innovation in energy markets manifest in Australia first as a test bed, and then it will be sold, in my view, at least to other parts of the world. So I think that also the other interesting phenomena in Australia is most of the installed capacity of solar is small scale, about 70 to 80% of it, whereas in America, most of it's large scale. And so this grassroots movement of renewable energy is very powerful in Australia. And so we consumers want to own this technology. And so
it gives people that, like it says, the democratization of the energy grid. People are actually partaking, and they're not just passive receivers and have no choices about how much they pay or how much they receive. And they can actually, I'm actually making my own power, and now I'm making money by selling power to my neighbor, or maybe I make half my power and buy the other half from my neighbor, whatever it might be, the equation. So it's absolutely amazing. And like you said, Australia makes such a great test case for those numbers because, here you are, they've got regular people who are just taking part and are going to make that nice decentralized marketplace for you.
Yeah, I memean, you can imagine a future where, electric vehicles will, effectively batteries on wheels, and they may provide some, base load power to the grid or in the peak period, or that you might sell some of that electricity, to help with frequency on the grid or capacity on the grid. So there's it's not just about electricity, it's also around ancillary services, and that to the extent that consumers can provide that value to the network, that they could be remunerated accordingly. I don't know if you want me to talk about the three product areas and how they work.
Absolutely.
Sure. So we've got peer-to-peer trading, which is basically across the network, and it's essentially building to building. And then a second product we've developed is peer-to-peer trading within a building. So
really? That's interesting. So if within apartments and things like that, you mean? Fantastic.
Correct. Yeah. So in Australia, about 30% of households are apartment buildings, but there's hardly any solar in them right now. And part of my PhD, which I did in disruptive innovation, looking at energy markets, it was applied research, and I designed a solar and battery system for an apartment building, which is the first of its kind in Australia. It's in Fremantle. I wanted to allocate units of electricity to each apartment, and if you weren't home to consume that allocation, you could trade it with your neighbours. And I couldn't find anything that did that. And then in January of 2016, I was introduced to a couple of blockchain developers, and I really had only heard about Bitcoin, and the blockchain notionally at that point, but I started investigating the potential for it in energy and saw it could do exactly what I wanted on the apartment building. And I introduced Dave Martin, one of the other co-founders, to the blockchain developers, John Bullich and Govenek, and Dave had been working in energy networks for 2 decades, and he saw a structural problem in the networks business, which is that because of distributed renewables, the network's being used less. But if you were to get the right price signals in place and encourage small transactions and the grid becoming a trading platform or a transactive grid, you could maintain the utilization of the grid and therefore its relevance. And so he basically said, I want to set up a company. Do you want to join me? And I was like, absolutely. And we could develop both the peer-to-peer trading across networks product, but also peer-to-peer trading within buildings. And so
fantastic. It's got a lot of applications for like shopping centers and things like that too. They can put the owners put the solar panels on the roof and they sell to the individual shops, keep it all localized, so even if there's a power outage or whatever, they're all protected from that. That's very interesting.
Correct. So it could be an office building or an apartment building or shopping centre for that matter. And so we've deployed that peer-to-peer trading within buildings product in Fremantle in 2 apartment buildings, and there's 2 more under construction.
Great.
And we'll be shortly connecting a shared electric vehicle and fast charger to the network. So anyone with their own EV can go and charge that and use the PowerLedger platform to pay for the electricity.
Fantastic.
And then, thank you. And we've got a third product which we've developed, and we're just choosing the first project site to deploy that in, and it's called Asset Germination. It's mentioned in the white paper, and it's basically a kind of crowdfunding model for renewable energy projects where the blockchain acts as the asset and income register. So I may buy 1% of the solar farm, like a large solar farm, and I get 1% of the income that's derived from that, and the blockchain handles that for me.
Yeah, the smart contract carries it all out and, set it and forget it kind of thing.
Correct. But it provides like a primary trading, selling market for the developer to sell shares in that project, so that it's not just, institutional investors getting access to this. It can be a community-owned solar farm or a community-owned battery.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Let's, small towns who are kind of, a bit removed, and they can say, all come together and say, hey, well, if everyone's going to put in, $500, then we're going to get this thing going, and everyone's going to pay into it, and, we'll get free energy, we'll pay it off, and then, hey, in, a year or 2 years' time, we can start selling to the town down the street, for example, and everyone gets money from that.
Correct. I think that, you're going to start to see these kind of solar bills that you just mentioned, Lark, and I think that's very exciting. We're just starting to piece together what do we need in our energy system to be able to maintain, a very stable and reliable energy network that is distributed. And I think that the disruption that's happening in the energy markets, is happening with or without PowerLedger, but the destruction of value, I think, is far more optional. So I think the grid is a very valuable asset, and hopefully we can maintain, use of it and keep the costs down, because the less people that use it, the more everyone else is left to pay for it.
That's it. Well, and the great thing about the, putting the onus of power production on, the regular person is actually, it provides a lot more security for that grid. Because if the power station goes down, you can still buy power off your neighbor John, again, in that situation. So there is so much application for that as well. It's really, really interesting. I saw the World Economic Forum came out with a report, which was compiled by Stanford University, and said that 139 nations, they've put out, a plan for these 139 countries to be 100% renewable by 2050. I saw it was really, really interesting, So I mentioned that because PowerLedger is just in the right place at the right time, We've got this situation going where, renewables are reaching that point of, mass adoption. 10 years ago it would have been much harder to have a company like this because not many people had solar panels at that point, right? And the market would have been a lot smaller, but now is the time. That's what makes this project so exciting. It's all there. You got the blockchain, you got the ability to, get people involved with the ICO, and of course the adoption of renewable energy is just, like you said, double-digit growth, right? So it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where are you, geographically? You said a bit about India, but are you trying to move into like Southeast Asia as well? I know like Indonesia must have huge potential.
Yeah, so we've got some inbound queries from Thailand who are both doing a lot of renewable energy projects and also very open to the blockchain. We're also having conversations in Korea and Japan. And in the States, we've got 3 projects that we're looking at the moment there. So there's quite a diverse landscape, and they vary from looking at like a large solar farm wanting to sell to many customers using the blockchain. Often where there's credits attached to those, like solar credits, the customers may not get those credits for like a long time because of the extended period of time it takes to reconcile a database. And so there's a potential to more efficiently deliver those credits to the market. So that's like a B2C project that we're looking at. And then there's obviously more like peer-to-peer or customer-to-customer transactions. But we think that the asset germination project is going to be product is going to be very exciting as well.
I think it'll be very popular as well. You know, I hear that and go, really? I want to do that. That sounds great. So, you know, I think the ICO is going to be, you know, it's already going, and I hope you guys have, you know, got a lot of those tokens already sold, and I'm sure the people will continue to really get involved in this because it is, you know, such an exciting project at the right time again. You know, I wanted to ask, though, you know, what are some challenges that you see for PowerLedger moving forward?
Sure. So with the building product, the law that governs those buildings in Australia is called strata law, in America is called condominium law, and in Europe is called freehold leasehold. And that legislation is actually very supportive of a building essentially selling electricity to the residents without needing a retail energy license. So that product can actually be scaled quite easily. And for property developers, they may want to design solar and battery systems in from the beginning, from the get-go, and off to the market. So I think there could be a unique selling point of differentiation for them in the market. For existing buildings, anything that's 5 stories or below, you can fit enough solar on the roof space to supply most of the electricity to the building. So there's a big potential. But what it does require is like the body corporate, you know, the people that manage the building to agree to do that. And so typically you'll need agreement from, say, 70% or more of the people that are on the council of owners in a building. So that's one challenge for retrofitting renewables into existing housing stock. That would need to be considered. In terms of the rules or regulations from an energy market perspective, for peer-to-peer trading, it's not that peer-to-peer trading is opposed at all. It just hasn't been contemplated. There is such a thing as like wheeling access arrangements where, like, you know, like an aluminium smelter might buy electricity from a power station down the road, and they do effectively a small peer-to-peer transaction that has been contemplated en masse. So we can do trials, but I think it'll be testing the regulation in terms of doing it en masse without reform. But I think there's certainly an appetite from the regulators that we've spoken with to do these kinds of trials, and we can get a lot of scale just with the regulations as they are right now. And
That's
then
it. When people find out this is available, I mean, I feel like, you know, people are going to be so excited about it. Not only are they doing something good for themselves and the environment, you know, but they're saving all this money too. So it's going to be popular.
I hope so. And then in terms of the regulation from an ICO perspective, we're doing the first ICO or token generation event in the Australian market.
Really? You know, I wasn't aware of that. That's actually really interesting too. That's really exciting too. I didn't realize it's the first sort of Australian ICO.
Yeah, absolutely. When we contemplated it, we've been working with Allen's Linklaters they advised, we wanted to know whether we could do it legally in Australia, as we hadn't seen any examples of it before. And they advised us that we could, and we also got them to tell us, you know, is it a security under Australian law? And they advised us that our power token is not. And they also said it's not a financial product, but why don't we do the disclosure documentation to the standard of a financial product? And so that's exactly what we've done.
Right.
So we're debuting an ICO in the Australian market to what we believe is a high standard. So we're really proud of that. And also we haven't set up a foundation with some, you know, shady governance. It's all happening under PowerLedger, the corporation. So we're governed by Australian corporate law. We've got a constitution and shareholders and a board. And so people can take some comfort in knowing that, you know, we'll be delivering on the plans that we outline in our white paper.
Yeah, and this is something I talked about in my video the other day, but you know, because you're a real company, this is so important. You know, there's so much dirty dealing out there in the ICO space, people who don't have real projects, who never deliver and all this stuff, and to actually see you're a fully functioning company, the tech already exists, everything already exists, it's there, it's just waiting to be, deployed and rolled out, or it's, in development waiting to just be put onto the market, and you've got that protection of Australian law and stuff, so it's just, it's such a, a home run, your ICO, so I hope people are out there and, investing in it and getting involved, it's really exciting.
Thank you.
I saw that Elon Musk, he's building this 100 megawatt lithium battery in South Australia. Do you see Do you see that as what Elon's doing as any kind of competition, or does that just fit into your model? And are you trying to work together with him for solutions?
It's quite funny that you should ask me that question, because I just wrote a letter to Elon Musk today.
Oh, cool.
I wrote to him and basically pitched the idea of his vision but distributed, and that our product might help redefine his product as a distributed system across the local network. So I think that, in a driverless syndicated world, Ubers and Lyfts, what we've developed is that crowdfunding model I mentioned, the asset germination, which uses the blockchain for financing a project, such as solar or a battery. And we think that, we could work together on a project like a solar bill, what you mentioned,
yep.
where Tesla Powers, are a feature in the new building areas, and we've actually got a project in mind on that. So I hope to hear. I tweeted about it actually, and some people in Telegram have been trying to get his attention, and then about 3 days ago, I got an email just out of the blue from someone from Tesla that had seen my tweet, and they said that they were meeting Elon tomorrow on Wednesday.
Great.
And had offered to give my letter to him. So I've just sent that off and, waiting to see what the response from the universe is.
Wow, that's great. I hope he gets in contact. I feel like, it'd be a sort of a match made in heaven in a lot of ways. And I did want to ask as well, now I've never seen a picture. Is Richard Branson also involved in this project?
Actually, in July of this year, I was fortunate enough to be invited to Sir Richard Branson's island for a blockchain summit that is held. It's been held for the past 3 years. I was invited by Bill Tai, and Bill Tai is on the board of Bitfury, and he's one of the early pioneers of the blockchain and has been a serial venture capitalist for about 2 decades. And at Necker Island, we announced that Bill Tai has become an ambassador and advisor to PowerLedger. So we're really thrilled to have him on board. And I am also in conversation to see, in what way we might be able to help the situation in the British Virgin Islands after, using the PowerLedger technology post the Irma and Maria hurricanes.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is, that's decentralized power network. Again, so much power, natural disasters as well. I know Tesla, they went into, I can't remember what the Pacific Island was, but they went in and, totally solarized the Pacific Island that had up until that point been, importing diesel, and so the potential for this stuff, now they don't have to worry about diesel, they don't have to worry about, their port getting knocked out or anything like that. They just got the production and that will be there. So...
Yeah, well, I think that developing countries, that are very heavily reliant on diesel, they may actually leapfrog, the current energy system and go straight to a distributed renewable energy future, and that it will quickly be cheaper for them to do that as opposed to perhaps, when you transition from one centralized system to distributed, the cost can rise in the intervening period, whereas for island nations, it may be that their price of electricity can go down from the get-go.
That's it. It's, this leapfrogging effect. I know when on all these climate talks, everyone says, yeah, but, if we stop, then India's just going to explode and whatever, and China's going to keep doing it. And so, actually, these guys, these countries, they realize what's going on. They see the problem. They understand the pollution problems that it brings, not to mention the financial problems, having to buy oil on the international market and all these things. They are jumping over this. China's the biggest producer of solar panels, and I think India is one of the biggest installers of solar panels at the moment. So
Yeah, I mean, they are, big producers of solar panels and also big miners in blockchain of, Bitcoin.
Also, that's it. And
big consumers of electricity to mine Bitcoin as well. So I think with the change in regulation there, it'll be very interesting to see how the market reorganizes itself outside of mainland China.
That's it. Actually, I talked about this recently in one of my videos as well as the environmental impact of Bitcoin mining. As much as I love Bitcoin mining, most of them are centered in China, and of course they're using coal-powered fire plants mostly, and so that's a problem. So moving forward, these renewable energy solutions can provide us with environmentally friendly Bitcoin, and of course great profits for anyone who wants to get involved in PowerLedger.
We hope so. Mark, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, Jemma, I just want to be conscious of your time. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I did just want to mention quickly for everyone who is really interested in getting into that's involved in the ICO. You're accepting only Ethereum for it, or Bitcoin and Ethereum?
Actually, we're accepting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin. And anyone that's interested can go to mainsale.powerledger.io or
I'll put a link down in the
powerledger.io.
video for it.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Lark. Yeah, and our we had a pre-sale and we basically sold 17 million Australian dollars worth of tokens, and they were priced as the main sale. It's an option, so the price won't be known until 6th of October. On Friday, the 6th of October, the auction will close. But we're selling 140 million tokens. All of those tokens will be distributed to anyone that's contributed funds to the main sale, and the amount of tokens you get will be determined by the amount of funds pledged within the main sale. So
great. So it'll just be divided out on the final amount, essentially.
Correct. Yes. It's called a volume-weighted average price.
Great. And now I know there's a 15% bonus running until the end of the week, till Sunday, or?
Till this Friday at 3 p.m. Perth time, which would be 7 o'clock New Zealand time. There's a 15% bonus, and then for the following week, the bonus will be 5%, and then in the last week, there won't be a bonus.
There you go, guys. So if you want to get in and get that, if you missed the 25% bonus last week and you're kind of kicking yourself, you still have time to get a 15% bonus, which is absolutely awesome. So if you do want to get involved in that ICO, get over there. The link will be down below. So go check that out and get involved, guys. So it's such an amazing project. It's so exciting. This is why I get involved in cryptocurrencies, to see projects like yours, to see that real world solutions are disrupting, the way things have worked. And this is, it's PowerLedger is a company of the future. So it's absolutely awesome.
Wow. I'm really flattered that you think so highly of the work we're doing. We're really inspired by the work as well, and really proud of the efforts that we've made so far, only since May last year. So I think that with the success in our ICO, which we're able to really execute on our plans and basically help change the energy system for the better sooner.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, Dr. Jemma Green, thank you so much for joining us today. I know a lot of my subscribers and a lot of other people out there on social media were really excited to hear your thoughts on this and to join in the conversation in the comment section below and things like that as well. So thank you so much for your time, and thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Lark. Great to meet you.
Nice meeting you too.